listener! Was it a good idea to employ me, Claptrap, a lovable robot with an admittedly shrill voice, to tell you about the next great looter shooter? Borderlands 4? Of course not! But you are listening, and that's the sick truth of marketing. Behold! Marketing hypnosis! Borderlands 4! Borderlands 4! Borderlands 4! Buy it! Buy it! Succumb to the marketing!
Rated M for mature.
Only Murders in the Building, Season 5.
The hit Hulu original is back.
The night Buster died, he was talking with this mobster.
Was he killed in a hit?
We need to go face to face with the mob.
Get ready for a season
Buongiorno, signore.
Oh, this is how I die.
you can't refuse.
You're going to save the day, like you always do, by being smart, sharp, and almost always by mistake.
The Hulu original series, Only Murders in the Building, premieres September 9th. Streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply. New episodes Tuesdays.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is the More Money Show, and I hope you're having a wonderful weekend in the middle of September. I guess this is the last few days of summer, so I hate to see the summer go by, but I love the fall as well. I hope you're having beautiful weather where you are. It's great to get outside and enjoy I hope there's sunshine where you are. There is where I am, and also the fresh air and getting exercise. Those are the best ways to stay healthy, folks. So thank you so much for our loyal listeners and regular listeners. We have great ratings thanks to you on the More Money Show. By the way, for those of you who are just introduced to the show, we're on in most stations 1 to 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoons. A lot to talk about. We cover money, we talk about finance, and we talk about politics on the show. And later in the show, we will be taking your calls. But in the meantime, I wanted to just start by talking a little bit about the big economic news of the week, which was, of course, what the Federal Reserve Board did with respect to the 25-point reduction in interest rates. I've been asked all week, what do you think about this? Was this a smart move? And I want to start by saying, look, I think that Wall Street and Washington, D.C. way over-obsess about what the Fed is going to do next. Are they going to tweak this interest rate or that interest rate? And I'm here to tell you they're not the Wizard of Oz behind a curtain, right? They can't just push a button, make the economy grow faster. They cannot pull a lever and put people to work. I mean, it would be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it, folks, if all we had to do was to create jobs is to print money. And then, boy, that would be amazing. All we'd have to do is get the printing presses up. And by the way, we've been doing that for a long time. And you all are smart people, so you know that when the Fed pushes more money out of the economy by lowering interest rates, one of the major effects of that is, as Milton Friedman taught us, inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. So if you pump more money into the economy, you might have a short-term stimulus from that money being in the economy, but in the medium and long term, that's going to cause more inflation. That's why I'm a supply sider. That's why Larry Kudlow, Art Laffer is a supply sider, because we believe the best way to increase production is through incentives, to give incentives to people to create jobs, to create businesses, new products, grow their enterprise. If you lower their tax rate, reduce their regulation, reduce their costs, they will have an incentive to make more money. And by the way, profit is not a dirty word. This is Moore's maxim. Profit is not a dirty word. It's not a four-letter word. The four-letter word is loss. Loss is a four-letter word. Profit is what makes the world go round. A lot of young people aren't learning that lesson. They think profits are evil. No, profits are not evil. Without profits, you don't have businesses. Without businesses, you don't have employers. Without employers, you don't have jobs. And without jobs, you don't have paychecks. So the magic of the market is that people are supplying goods and services to people that they're willing to pay for. And that is the essence of the free enterprise system. We need to remember that the Fed's primary responsibility, I think it should be its sole responsibility, frankly, is to make sure that the dollar remains strong and stable. It gets back to the whole issue of why do we have a currency in the first place? Why do we have a currency? A currency is to be a means of trade, and it's also a way of having it's something you want to be stable. If the dollar were fluctuating up and down and up and down and up and down, people wouldn't use the dollar. And we need to make sure. And my good friend David Malpass makes this point often, and so does Judy Shelton. Two people would be great additions to the Federal Reserve Board. That what the Fed should be doing right now is defending the dollar and making sure that the dollar is not being challenged by BRICS and by the euro and all these other currencies. The Chinese would love to make the yuan the world currency. We're not going to allow that to happen, and Trump is absolutely committed to making sure the dollar remains strong and stable, but that means making sure that inflation stays low. Now, I know a lot of you are angry, as I am, about food prices and grocery prices. They have not come down. They continue to climb. But look at gas prices. Gas prices, I just got a note from one of my friends living in Georgia. They're paying $2.58 a gallon. Remember, it went up to about $5 a gallon in California in recent weeks, and it's about half that price in Georgia. So gas prices are low. That's a good thing. Nobody likes to have to pay, $80 to fill up their tank. So look, overall, I'm bullish on the economy. I really am. I'm looking at lower costs from the tax cut. I'm looking at lower costs from the deregulation. As Larry Kudlow talked about in his show in the previous hour, the fact that we're now allowing companies to immediately expense their capital purchases is causing a lot of new investment in this country. Trump is bringing in hundreds of billions of dollars investment from all over the world: Japan, Korea, China, UK, and even the Europeans are starting to send money here for investment to build factories, to build technology centers. We are the capital of the world when it comes to the world economy, and we are going to make sure that we retain that global superpower status with this guy that we've got in the White House named Donald Trump. Finally, we have someone who understands business, how to meet a payroll, how to produce things. Now, Joe Biden, I'm not going to bemoan him. I'm simply going to say that he didn't know anything about business. He spent his whole career in government. So it makes a big difference when you have a guy in the White House making the big decisions who actually knows how things work. So we're bullish here on the More Money Show. By the way, we are live. We are in color. We'll take your callers later in the show, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, folks. This is the More Money Show. This is economist Steve Moore, and I hope you're having a great weekend. I want to go back to something I was talking about a few minutes ago on the show, because already I've been getting a lot of emails and a lot of texts from people saying, you don't understand the Fed. Trump is right about this. We need lower interest rates. And I'm not opposed to the Fed. I just want to make it clear that I'm not opposed to this rate cut. What I'm saying is what is going to grow the economy is not whether the Fed lowers or raises the short-term interest rate. Nobody borrows at that short-term interest rate. What I'm saying is what's going to drive the economy is the tax cut, the deregulation. Hopefully we can get rid of all of this excessive spending. In fact, my line on this, just so you know, is that we do need to cut something in Washington, but it's not cutting the interest rates. It's cutting massive hundreds of billions of dollars of wasteful government spending. And you want to see inflation brought under control. You want to see a faster growing economy, get rid of all of these extraneous spending programs, lower the borrowing requirements of the federal government. If we do those things, we will grow even faster. The good news is, by the way, that the economic growth rate in the second quarter was revised upward to 3.3%, which is a rate of growth that we didn't have in the entire 4 years of Joe Biden. And for the third quarter, which ends on October 1st in a couple of weeks, the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta is estimating growth for the third quarter over 3%. So why was the Fed chairman out there, Jerome Powell, saying, oh, my God, we're going to only have 1.5% growth? He's completely wrong about that. The economy is actually doing well for most workers and for most businesses. Incidentally, you may have seen on Thursday, we had the largest close for the all four of the major stock indices. That almost never happens. It happens about as often as a blue moon. We got a record high in the Dow Jones, in the NASDAQ, in the S&P 500, and the Russell 2000. Amazing. Amazing. And as I said, that doesn't happen very often. What that is telling you, folks, is that investors around the country are betting on Trumponomics. They're saying, we like the direction that Trump is taking the economy. You folks know me, if you're a regular listener, I love Donald Trump. He has been nothing but good to me. I regard him as a great and kind and compassionate and smart guy and a great president. But I don't always agree with everything he does. I'm not a big fan of his tariffs. As you know, I had some of you know that I had a piece in the Wall Street Journal on Thursday saying, hey, why do we have aluminum tariffs? Why are we placing 50% tariffs on aluminum? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I pointed out, and I interviewed a lot of companies that use aluminum, because aluminum is used in our cars, in our construction projects, in our airplanes, in almost everything we produce uses some aluminum. If you're drinking a Coca-Cola or you're having a Coors beer, that tin can or that aluminum can is made out of aluminum. And yet what's happening is a lot of factories are having to slow down their production because the aluminum that we import from countries like Canada is so expensive that they are having a hard time making ends meet. So since we don't produce an aluminum here in the United States, why would we put a tariff on it? It doesn't make any sense. It's only making our products more expensive when our car companies and our construction projects and our airplane companies, when they produce things, they're having to buy aluminum that's 50% more expensive than everyone else. That puts America at a competitive disadvantage. A couple of other things I wanted to mention to you, if I may, because I think this was an incredible week, actually, for news. One of the interesting things is I was honored this week to attend the Yale University Corporate CEO Conference in Washington, D.C. They hold this once or twice a year, and about 50 to 100 major CEOs of companies come to this conference, and I go mainly because I want to hear what they're saying. What are they saying about the condition of the U.S. economy? And they usually let me speak for about 10 or 15 minutes about the economy, which I did, and I told them, look, the economy is looking really strong to me, and most of them agreed with that. But what was really interesting is they do these polls of CEOs, and they ask them a whole series of questions. And one of the questions I found was really right up my alley. The question was, can free market capitalism outcompete China's state-directed economy? I'm going to say that again. Can free market capitalism outcompete China's state-directed economy? And what the result of this poll was amazing, actually, to me, because a lot of these CEOs came up to me and said, I don't like Trump. They're kind of more liberal oriented, and they don't like Trump for this or that or the other thing. But here was the result, and I was really heartened by this result. 73% of these CEOs say, no, America is going to win. 73% of them. Only 27%, or 1 out of 4, said they're more worried about China winning. We will win. I'm here to tell you, folks, we are going to win in this struggle for global supremacy. And the reason we are going to win is because we have the free enterprise system, we have incredibly efficient capital markets, and we have all the dynamo in our economy. By the way, the fact that we import the immigrants from all over the world. We get some of the smartest people in the world. You go to Silicon Valley, it's like the modern day melting pot where you have people coming from China, Korea, Japan, Europe, France, the Middle East, and they come with great ideas and they great companies. 4 out of the 7 great companies in the world are here in the United States, and they were all started by immigrants. So that all of these things make America an economic superpower, and we always have to be attentive to China because they want to catch the United States, but they will not because they are state-directed, and politicians never make as good decisions as private entrepreneurs and private capitalists. That's why capitalism, free market capitalism, as Larry Kudlow would say, is the best path to prosperity. Now, I want to make one other quick point before we have to take another break. I know a lot of my listeners are in the state of New Jersey. I know that because you call in and we get so many calls from people from New Jersey. But everybody should be paying attention to this because it's something that's happening around the country. But it's especially happening now in New Jersey because New Jersey has an election in, coming up in about 5 weeks. Their gubernatorial contest will be decided. Now, New Jersey is one of the most liberal Democratic states in the country, but the Republican has a very good chance of winning this race. Jack Ciattarelli, a good guy. I've met him once or twice. He is pro-business. He's pro-growth. He's pro-tax cut. And he basically has said, I want to make New Jersey's tax system more like that of Tennessee. Great idea. Great idea. Jack, you are exactly right. That's exactly what New Jersey needs. It needs to cut or eliminate its income tax and move more towards a sales tax. 9 states today have no income tax, and it just so happens those states like Florida and Texas and Tennessee and New Hampshire and Washington State are doing much, much, much better than the states with high taxes. So Jack said, hey, why don't we think about being more like Tennessee? By the way, Tennessee is absolutely booming. Some of the biggest, fastest growing cities in America, Chattanooga and Knoxville and Nashville, are growing like weeds. They're sucking money out of New Jersey and New York and Connecticut. When you go to, I just was in Nashville a few weeks ago, you see a lot of people who used to live in that tri-state area that have moved. Anyway, so he made this point in a speech that we should have in New Jersey a tax code more like Tennessee. And now the Democrats are running ads against him saying he wants a 10% sales tax. Well, first of all, if the sales tax you might raise it to 8%, but you're not going to have any income tax. He's talking about completely eliminating the income tax. You have one of the highest corporate income taxes. You have one of the highest personal income taxes. You have one of the highest death taxes. Can you imagine how fast New Jersey would grow, or Connecticut for that matter, if there was no income tax? By the way, Connecticut, before Low Weicker, did not have an income tax. And boy, it was one of the richest states in the country with the most vibrant economy. Ever since they adopted an income tax, they've gone into the toilet. That, of course, happened in New Jersey as well. New Jersey has the highest property taxes, one of the highest corporate taxes, one of the highest income taxes. It still can't balance its budget. And so, I think what Jack is talking about makes a lot of sense. I think it would bring a lot of capital and jobs back to the great Garden State. But you can't keep going on with these higher and higher and higher taxes. Now, I don't get involved in politics here, but I will say this. The Democratic candidate, who I've never met, I don't know much about her, Mickey Sherrill, she has no tax plan at all. No, she's fine with the way taxes are in New Jersey. In fact, knowing how Democrats feel about taxes, she probably wants to raise them. So this idea, I just want you to know, folks in New Jersey, it is a lie. It is a lie that Jack Ciattarelli wants to have a 10% sales tax. He doesn't. He wants to replace the income tax, maybe raise the sales tax a bit to pay for it, but that's a good bargain, folks, a very, very good bargain. New Jersey would grow dramatically and immediately if you have that tax change. So go for it, and don't believe the lies that the left is telling you about these things. I mean, they only can get along, and they can only move forward by telling lies. That's what they do.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for listening in this afternoon, the third week of September. My next guest is a really good friend and someone who is known to everyone around the country for the amazing job that he did for Donald Trump in his very first year in office back in 2017 as the spokesman for the White House, Sean Spicer, or should I say, Captain Sean Spicer.
You have 10 more days, Steve. It's good to be with you, but yeah, that'll be nice.
Tell us how that all came about. So, if you haven't heard the news, folks, Sean you're in the Navy Reserve?
That's correct.
Okay. And so you have been elevated, or has it happened yet, or is it still in the works?
So the way it works in the military, well, for officers, is there's a selection board. They meet every year, and I was selected for promotion. And then what happens is, at least in the Navy, I can't speak to the other branches as well.
Yes,
there's a list that comes down. You get ranked in your list, depending on, and then you'll love this. It's all it's very, very fiscally appropriate, Steve. They rank you, and you promote throughout the fiscal year. So October 1 is the beginning of the government's fiscal year by the amount of money so there's, the first one on the list, and I luckily am first on the list, which is kind of cool because that October 1st, the first person always promotes the first day of the new fiscal year. But the second person could promote, the list comes out every month. So in November, there'll be a list saying these are the captains, these are the 06s, which is the captains that are now promoted to this rank. And so if you've been selected for promotion, you will promote within that fiscal year, but it largely depends on when other captains are retiring or the funds become available. So if there were 10, in my case, there were 4 captains selected in my group, and I was number 1 on the list, so I know I'm October 1st. But the number 2 guy could be the first quarter, the first month of the second quarter. He could be November. So I say that because if anyone's listening that's been in the military, you know that if you're trying to plan a promotion party, which this is why Steve knows about this, that
I wanted to have one for you.
You can plan it. If you're number 2, you kind of have to wing it.
Yeah. Okay. So Sean, I'm just looking at because you and I have been friends a long time. I did not realize that you had this military career. You joined, I'm looking at your profile, that you joined the Navy Reserve in 1999?
1999, right? Yeah. And because of my civilian career, again, it was just my choice. I always chose to keep politics out of it. I didn't want anyone ever talking to, and so I went above and beyond. It's funny because until I think it was the end of my tenure at the RNC, beginning of the White House, when it was obviously a lot more public then, I didn't even include it in my bio because and a lot of people, some people in the military said, why are you not doing that? And I said, because I never want to cross streams, and I never want anyone in the military saying I'm politicizing because or vice versa.
Right.
And I didn't want anyone questioning my service. So it's your
that's
point.
so great. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about our favorite person, Donald J. Trump, who you know as well as anyone. And I'm going to give you kind of a hypothesis, and you're the best person to ask about this because, I remember when you were doing the press conferences for Trump, and then when Trump would come in front of the press in his first term, in his first couple of years, one of the things that struck me, Sean, and you've spoken about this, was the outright hostility of the media towards Trump. And it was actually, I thought, really poor form, they treated him very shabbily. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, put it this way. I'll flip the question on you. I don't know that you could objectively find a person, regardless of their place on the political spectrum, that wouldn't agree that the media is and was extremely hostile to him. I don't even think you have to be a partisan to admit that. That's a fact.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I always had so much admiration for you because, boy, did you take it. I was like, how do you do that? How do you just take these? Boom.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And the funny part was yesterday, I actually there was something that you and I talked about in the past, and the president was signing this executive order on the gold card. And I thought, well, why don't I go over? I have a press pass. So yesterday was the first time I was in the press pool. I literally questioned the president of the United States yesterday, and I posted it up on social media today on my Instagram page. And I was just like, it was so fun to be able to be like on the other side. He's like, Sean, do you have a question for me? And I'm like, yes, sir. And it was funny because Jonathan Karl, he's going off on Jonathan Karl. You're terrible. You're the worst reporter ever. And these guys are coming at him. And then he goes to me, and I'm like, good afternoon, Mr. President. And it was just...
Well, the point I was driving at, by the way, is that, I was at one of the president's press conferences a month or so ago, and it was a very different feel in the room from the first term. I think maybe the media has accepted the fact that he really is president. He's going to be here for 3 more years. And so I'm glad to see that they're at least, they're still hostile, but they're treating him at least more respectfully than they were in his first term. I don't know. What do you think?
So I think there's something to that. Okay, you're right. There's a less, they recognize a couple things. One, there's less of an attempt to become a YouTube star the way that an April Ryan or a Jim Acosta did, where I'm going to try to make a name for myself. So there's a little less of that, number one. And I agree with you. And then a little less, like even John Karl, if the president talked to him about what a terrible person and reporter he was, at the end said, thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate you taking the questions. Like it was like, you're right. There's an acceptance. Like, okay, it's going to be like this for 3 more years. But I would posit that there is a third, in my opinion, bigger issue at stake, which is the dilution of them. So as I mentioned, I was there yesterday. I was sitting in the thing. You've seen Brian Glenn from Real America's Voice. You've seen people from the Daily Caller. Reagan Reese was standing next to me yesterday asking a multitude of questions. She did a great profile on the president from the Daily Caller the other day. And when I say this, what I mean is, so people understand this. When I was press secretary, it was literally Washington Post, New York Times. Like,
exactly.
There was a new John Gizzi from Newsmax was there, but Newsmax wasn't even what it is today. There really wasn't. They didn't have a TV presence. There was no Real America's Voice. There was no Right Side Broadcasting. Daily Caller existed, and they had a correspondent, but not to the robust nature that they do now. The Daily Wire's got a correspondent. Turning Point USA has a correspondent there.
Right.
And so I would argue that there's been an infection of ideas in the briefing room. Where yesterday, like I said, the president did call on NBC News. He called on the Washington Post. He called on NBC. But he also called on me. He called on Reagan Reese. So when I say it's a dilution of the impact that they have, number one. And number two, it's an infection. So yesterday, I questioned the president about the gold card, about visa programs. I talked to him about the Virginia election. I talked to him about, last night I had the Fed share. And so, it's not that they aren't serious issues, but all the media wanted to talk about yesterday was Jonathan Karl cared about his own station, ABC News, and attacks on Jimmy Kimmel because Jimmy Kimmel insulted Charlie Kirk and MAGA supporters. So they care about them and themselves and their issues. And during my tenure, it was always Russia, 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 Mike Flynn this. And now you have other reporters. Like I said, Reagan Reese was talking about some great issues. And it changes the nature of those interactions, and the American people can hear about things that aren't entirely what the left-wing liberal legacy media wants to talk about.
So just got about a minute left. I'm talking to the great Sean Spicer. You know him from his duty as the president's press secretary in his first term, and is now on the other side of that microphone. One last question, Sean, and that is just the way that Trump deals with the press. How do you kind of compare and contrast how it is today versus how he's, because I think he handles the press masterfully now. I think he was much more combative in his first term, but what is your reaction to that?
Yeah, it's a brilliant assessment because, Steve, you're putting your finger on something really important. There's a level of confidence that he has where he doesn't, and also a command and presence of the office, because look, we were all new coming in, and I admit I came up through very traditional sources. So I was like, okay, this is how the interaction works. And I was actually talking about this with some of the media yesterday, like, oh, this is how many pool. When I called yesterday and I said to the folks in the lower press office, I said, could I join the pool today? They're like, yeah, absolutely. That would have never been allowed, previously. And there's a command and sure, he'd be glad to do this. He'd be glad to have an interview. He'd be glad to do this. And he understands the tools at his disposal. He has a level of confidence and command that, frankly, no newcomer could ever have in their first term. And you're putting your finger on something so brilliant, because I've been fascinated by this difference between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0.
Great minds think alike. Well, Captain Spicer, thank you so much for joining. I know how busy you are. Really appreciate you coming on the More Money Show. Folks, we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. This is Steve Moore, economist. By the way, I hope everyone is getting the More Money hotline, which is absolutely free. It costs nothing. Just go to unleashprosperity.com and click on hotline, and you will get our daily update on what's going on economics, on politics, on finance. I know a lot of people around the country. We have about 200,000 subscribers to that. And by the way, it's free. It costs nothing. You just have to sign up for it. By the way, my next guest, Bob Nardelli, who is a regular on this show and has become a good friend and a real mentor to me. He, of course, is Bob Nardelli, the former CEO of Home Depot. He ran Chrysler. He worked for the great Jack Welch at General Electric. I always say that Bob Nardelli has the Midas touch. Everything he touches turns to gold. So Bob, thanks so much for joining.
Steve, thank you very much. You're always so kind with that introduction. And let me just add my support to More Money on the hotline. I read it religiously every morning, and everybody that will
thank you.
Everybody I talk to, as usual, I send you a note where I tell them to subscribe, and I get 100% thumbs up from all of those people, Steve. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bob. I really appreciate it. And we have so many important people like you reading it. We have congressmen, senators, governors, CEOs. So thank you so much. And by the way, it's free, folks. Just go to unleashprosperity.com. Okay. Lot to talk to you about, this afternoon, Bob. I want to start with I always feel like you are one of the few people who really has the finger on the pulse of the labor market, business conditions. I was somewhat, disturbed by Jerome Powell's assessment of the economy. It was very dour. I thought it was very dire. It was, we're only going to grow at 1.5%. We got all these labor problems and the economy is going to get worse. And I'm thinking, well, gee, as I'm looking at these statistics, they look pretty good. Are there some problems? Yes. Grocery prices are still too high, but gas prices have come down a lot. There are still 6-7 million job openings in this country. So how would you assess right now the outlook for the U.S. economy?
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I listened very carefully to the chairman, and you and I have had discussions about this. I wasn't surprised at his narrative. There obviously is continued animosity between he and President
right.
Trump, unfortunately.
Right.
I think somewhat begrudgingly, he took it down a quarter point. And, Steve, you and I talked about the robust reaction to that. We saw the Dow go up to 36, 315. So there's a lot of believers out there that, the indication that we might get 2 more this year. And there's some thoughts about even getting it lower next year. But, we saw the 4.25 to 4.5 go down, to 25 points, and some projections that will go to maybe 3.25, 350. Right. Wow. Others are saying maybe below 3 by 2026, and I think a lot of that will. So that,
by the way, that what we're at, what do we have? 4.5 today, or 4. What is the rate today?
They're saying to project it was 4.25 to 4.5, and now with a quarter point, they're telling what I read was 4.42.
Got it.
Right.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
so you're saying they may cut? You think they may cut another 50, or the market believes another 50 to 75 basis point cut may be in the works?
I think they're thinking about each meeting. We got 2 more meetings, even maybe a quarter point each meeting, which would then get us down into that range. And then there's there was some speculation that it could go lower next year, and a lot of that's going to depend upon the other 2 or 3 points you made. And let me just reflect a little bit. If you think about GDP, your question, at the end of last year we were about 2.4%. And then we hit the ditch a little bit in the first quarter.
We did,
What I felt with all the businesses, both public and private, I'm actively involved in, chairman, boards, what have you. A lot of that we felt was an inventory pullback. I think everybody got extremely concerned with the overall, what do I always say, the certainty of uncertainty going forward. So we saw the pullback big time
was that a result of the tariffs, or?
I think, it's just partly some of the confusion, right, Steve, that's out there. And, but the good news is, look, it bounced back at the end of the second quarter, right, Steve? At 3.3, we saw inventories start to come back.
Yeah, good numbers.
Consumer and rebound, exactly what you said. I think there's still some angst on the inflation numbers. If you look at that, where are we on core of 3.1? Of course, that takes food and energy out, and the standard CPI is about 2.9%, according to the Philadelphia Feds. So I think there's still, to me, it's a mixed market, and it's mixed industries out there. Energy is off the charts. I mean,
amazing.
I've been this, as long as you and I have known each other, I've been a real zealot on energy independence. I was shocked we surrendered it under the last administration.
Terrible,
it's roaring back. The biggest geopolitical thing we lost with the last administration, Steve, was we stopped shipping LNG.
Yes.
Now it's plentiful.
Now we're doing it again.
We'll do that again.
And by the way, we were just playing into the hands of the Russians and our enemies when we stopped that production.
Exactly. I mean, you might as well turn your cards over and then bet. I mean,
right. Exactly.
it was so blatantly obvious. And I think a lot of the bureaucracy, look, a lot of companies are doing right voluntarily on energy conservation and pollution in the environment. They can't be driven to a point that's not achievable. It's like trying to schedule an invention, right? You and I both know that's not the truth. Hard to do. And I think we're getting some more, keep it simple, keep the industries, at full tilt if you can, capacity wise. It covers a lot of your costs, your overhead, your variable overhead rate. So I'm encouraged with what I'm seeing. There's still a lot of angst with the global unrest. I think there's still these extensions in the tariffs, again, causing some hesitancy on capital costs and capital bets. We see some companies doing right voluntarily. I've talked about some of those that, are putting brick and mortar into the ground, building new factories. I thought it was interesting when I read the article about Nippon wanting to close the steel plant in Granite City, Illinois. Now, this is a small town. I know it very, very well.
Yes. You and I are both from Illinois, right?
What did the administration say? Nope, you're not doing it. There's 800 people there working, and our deal was you can't shut a plant without our approval. That was kind of the quid pro quo in that negotiation. Remember when they agreed to buy a U.S. steel? Yep. So I don't mean to be rambling, but I think overall we're moving in the right direction. Overall, I see more positives than negatives. Yep, there's still some uncertainty out there, but I'm confident we're gonna bring that to base, Steve.
That's Bob Nardelli, by the way, folks. He is former CEO of Home Depot and Chrysler. He worked for the great Jack Welch at GE. That's a good training ground, by the way. So, Bob, we just got a couple minutes left. Two other issues I wanted to, that's a great assessment, by the way. It's a great assessment because I agree with it. So I agree with every word you just said. But I wanted to ask you about two questions. One is, you and I have been talking a little bit about aluminum tariffs. I think the aluminum tariffs are ill-advised. We put 50% tariff, but we use so much aluminum in this country for the things that we produce. And I think it may actually be costing more jobs than we make.
Yeah. You've identified a real sensitive point. I think there's some confusion, if I could say it that way, Steve, between steel and aluminum.
Yes.
And I'm not sure we should, group those into the same tariff issue for a couple of reasons. One,
we make steel in the United States, but we don't make aluminum, right?
Well, we don't make aluminum for a couple of reasons, right? We don't have bauxite to the degree that we have other raw materials. Number two, if you want to put a smelter here in the United States to create ingots, aluminum ingots, then shut down all of your data centers because it will suck the power, right out of the and we're better off with AI because of productivity and so forth. So, we also are the largest recycler of aluminum.
Yeah.
So we're from 6.
Well, we got to wrap, Bob. But thank you so much for coming on. This is the More Money Show, folks, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome, folks. This is the second hour of the More Money Show. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. It's always my pleasure and privilege to be in front of this microphone every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3 p.m. I know other stations throughout the country get the show on a delayed broadcast. Thank you for sticking with us through the second hour. Lot to talk about this hour, and I will be taking your calls, by the way. I am excited to say that we've saved about 20 minutes for your calls because I learned so much from listening to you. I always say I'm not the smartest radio talk show host, but I have the smartest audience, and I believe that because I hear from you. I listen to what you say, and I learn a lot from what you say. So please call in. We'll be taking your calls close to the bottom of the hour. That More Money hotline number, just so you have it, is 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222. WABC. Is there an easy way to understand that? 1-800-848-9222. And if you're a new caller, please, let our, producer know, because I want to hear from some new people. We get a lot of people who call in week after week, and I love that. I love hearing from you, but I'd love to hear from some new people, new voices. And the question of the day has to do with this subject. I talked a little bit about this on the Larry Kudlow show earlier. I believe one of the big problems we have in this country is what I call men without work. Men without work. And maybe I should say boys without work, but really men. I'm talking about teenagers and men in their early 20s who are not working. I believe that this is causing a lot of the social problems. If you look at the people who've been committing these murders, including the murderer of Charlie Kirk, so many of them have the same profile. They're troubled. They have issues with their gender identity. They are depressed. They're lonely, and they're not working. They're not working. They don't have a job. And my dear old mother used to always say that if you're not working, you're getting into trouble. That idleness is the working hands of the devil. And I think that's true. When especially young men, when they don't have anything to do, they get into trouble. It's just, you see that with gangs. You see that all the time. So I believe we would be much better off really having a cultural shift to having young men having jobs at 15, 16, 17, 18. I had my first job at 14 years old. I was working at a factory filling orders, and it was a tough job, but, you learn a lot when you're working. Even if it's a menial job, you just learn a lot about dealing with people, dealing with bosses, how to do things, staying productive. And we've got a lot of kids. And by the way, this is a problem I have with college. Why is it that college kids are not working when they're in college? It's ridiculous. I mean, the one thing that college kids have is plenty of time. They wouldn't be rampaging in the streets and protesting about this or that or some other idiotic cause if they actually had a job and they didn't have time for being up to social mischief. So, I believe strongly. Now, I think women should be working too at a younger age, but especially men, because they get into trouble if they don't have anything to do. And so, let's change that. One time I was very criticized by the left saying, I said, well, maybe we shouldn't have the child labor laws. Oh my God, Steve Moore wants, the 7-year-olds to be working and 8-year-olds. No, all I'm saying is that, for those of you who grew up on a farm, you'll know what I'm talking about. My wife grew up on a farm. I did not, but I've always been struck by the fact that how many successful people that I meet, people like Bob Nardelli, who I just had on the show earlier, they grew up on a farm. And why is that interesting? Because if you grow up on a farm, you don't start working when you're 18 years old. You start working when you're 8 years old. You're cleaning out the barn. You're feeding the animals and doing all of this stuff, building fences and all of that stuff at a very early age. In other words, you build a work ethic and you stay out of trouble. And I really believe this is part of the problem with our society, why there's so much violence out there by troubled young kids. And the best thing we can do is to have them productive, doing something productive for our economy. Now, I want to hear back from you. Do you agree with me or disagree? Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like we could cut down on the violence if we had more young people working. And that is my message for the day. When we get back, I'm going to be talking to Ted Frank, who is one of the world's experts taking on the trial lawyers, because I think the trial lawyers have become a big tax on the U.S. economy. And so he has been fantastic. So Ted is coming on in just a minute. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. That, of course, is the Beatles, Can't Buy Me Love, and it's one of those eternal questions of whether money can buy you love. I don't know. You can try, but it is true that people with money always get the cutest girls. You can't deny that. Anyway, I am glad that you're with us this afternoon, folks. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend in the middle of September. September is actually one of my favorite months. I mean, the weather is beautiful. It's football season, a real season of joy and happiness and getting out and getting exercise. So I hope you're doing all of those things. So my next guest is Ted Frank, and Ted is, an amazing economics guy. He's done so much in terms of, taking on the trial lawyers and other groups that would do damage to our economy. So, Ted, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So tell us what you're up to. I mean, you've had so many victories, and tell us about your organization and how people can get involved, because I think it's so important to our economy.
Thank you. We're a nonprofit law firm, Hamilton Lincoln Law Institute. That's HLLI.org.
Yep.
And
so, I'm sorry, it's Hamilton Lincoln Law Institute.
Yes, sir. HLLI.
Got it.
And I'm at Ted Frank on X. And what we do, a lot of what we do, is we go after abusive class action settlements. You get these notices, and it's for a tiny little coupon, and the attorneys are getting millions.
Yes.
And we take the position that the consumers, the allegedly injured parties, should be the primary beneficiary of a class action settlement.
Ted, stop right there with you up. So, because I want to make sure everyone understands what's going on here, because it's so important. So you're representing the class action people who've been harmed, and what's happening, as I understand it, because I followed your work, is that in many cases, let's say you have a defective product or something, that the people who are getting all the money are the lawyers, not necessarily the people who are harmed. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
That's exactly right. We have a case in New York pending right now over flushable wipes. And
over what?
Flushable wipes. The Cottonelle, wet wipes.
Got it. Yes.
They advertise them as flushable. They're allegedly not flushable. People were complaining about, gigantic plumbing expenses, and they bring suit, and then they settle it so that the attorneys get $3 million, and the class, all of the millions of people who have bought this product and were allegedly injured, are getting a grand total of $1 million. 99% of the class will get nothing because.
How does that happen, Ted?
Well, it's fascinating. They would go to the court and they said, okay, we're going to, the defendant is going to put up to $20 million available. And then they do nothing to notify the class or make sure that the class gets the money.
Sorry, time out. Let me just, again, because I this is so important what you're saying. How is it that, let's say, the Joe Schmo law firm is able to represent these people when they don't even know who they are? I mean, I don't even get that.
That's the fascinating and unique thing about the American class action system. I show up into court with a client and I say, I hereby, this client here bought Cottonelle wet wipes, and they hereby represent everybody in the United States who ever bought wet wipes. And those are all my clients now once we certify the class.
Even though they don't even know who those people necessarily are.
Even though I, the lawyer, don't know who they are, even though the defendant doesn't know who they are, even though those people don't know that there's a lawsuit. You are in the lawsuit unless you opt out of the lawsuit.
So here's again, Ted, here's the thing. Let's say I was harmed by a product and I suffered some real, financial loss and impairment. And maybe that impairment is $50,000, just picking out a number. So if there's a class action suit and the trial lawyers are, walking away with all the money, how am I made whole by that? I don't really understand the logic of it.
It's worse than that because they are negotiating away your right to sue. They are trading
outrageous.
They're trading a release of everybody in the class's rights. So your $50,000 claim disappears unless you go and specifically opt out. Unless you've already hired a lawyer and the lawyer is keeping track and finds out that they're trying to extinguish your rights. And these guys are settling that you can write to the settlement administrator and get a $5 check for your $50,000 of trouble. And then only a couple of 100,000 people write in. And so the class only gets $1 million. Kimberly Clark gets off scot-free if they've done something wrong, or otherwise they're just paying $3 million to the attorneys.
So we see all the time on TV these asbestos ads. I'm sure you've seen them, and these are, I believe, being run by class action lawyers.
Well, that's actually a different animal. Those are mass actions. So there you're signing up with a lawyer.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's a different thing.
It's a different scam because the people you're signing up with aren't actually the ones who are trying your case. They end up selling your case to the real lawyers.
Oh my God! So that's become a bit of a racket too.
Yeah, but nothing we can do about that. You sign a contract and you're kind of stuck with the contract. But we represent the people who didn't know that they had a lawyer.
Now, what about the one of the most famous product liability cases, of course, was the tobacco lawsuits. Were those class action suits? Did smokers get? I know the trial lawyers a lot of made money, but
they brought that. There was a lot of different things going on there, and that it wasn't brought as a class action. Those were states using trial lawyers to like.
Okay.
I mean, that was its own scam because the argument is that the tobacco companies caused the states to spend more on Medicare than they would have, and actually the numbers showed that because smokers die young, they spend less. But
okay, so give us an example then. I cut you off. I apologize. About a case where you have people who've been potentially injured by a product. But they have, where the trial lawyers walked away with money, but the people who were injured got peanuts.
Well, sometimes it's even less than peanuts. We've just argued a case in the Ninth Circuit out in California in federal court. Google settled a case over privacy violations for they told you if you click this box, we won't track your location, and then they tracked your location anyway. And so lawyers sued over that. Maybe there's a case there.
Yeah, sure.
And Google thought there was enough of a case that they settled for $62 million. But you, the class member, are getting zero of that. The lawyers are getting $19 million. And then everybody agreed to create this $43 million slush fund, and all the money is going to left-wing groups like the ACLU. And Harvard projects and DEI, and it's fascinating because it's not like everybody who uses Google is left wing and wants to support the ACLU. And
so in the case that you were starting to tell us about, so what do you do to help in other words, what is your value added in this whole scam that's going on? What do you guys do?
Before a class action settlement can go forward, a court has to approve it because you have absent class members who are affected. And the absent class members are supposed to get notice in a hearing. And the notice is kind of questionable. It's usually like buried on page C32 on USA Today. But we have ways of finding out about it, and we find a class member. And we go into court and we say, we got notice of this class action settlement, and this settlement is unfair to the class because the lawyers are taking all the money and the class is getting nothing. And that gives us the right.
You mean? And sorry, you take that to the judge, or who do you?
We take it to the judge who has the authority to approve the settlement. The settlement can't go forward unless it's approved by a judge. And we tell the judge, don't approve this settlement because the lawyers are taking all the money.
And how many of these have you won?
Oh, dozens. We've won over a couple of $100 million directly for class members.
and
amazing.
then indirectly, we create precedents by winning appeals, and sort of deter some of the worst settlements from going forward. But
this is millions of dollars that would have gone to the trial lawyers that are now actually going to the injured parties.
Billions, but yes.
Billions. That's awesome. I mean, that's fantastic. So, but I'm sure the trial lawyers don't like you very much.
I've been accused of that, and I see it firsthand. They don't quite yet have Rotten Tomato vendors when I speak, but there's definitely a chill in the room at some.
Now, what would they say? I mean, because you deal with these people, Ted, and I think 90% of the people who are listening to the show agree with what you're saying, and they think it's not fair that the people who are injured are not getting the money. But what would, if I had a trial lawyer on with you, what would they say in their own defense? I mean, it doesn't seem fair.
They would say, well, it's hard to bring these cases, and if the lawyers aren't getting paid, then we won't bring them. And I would say, okay, that's a feature, not a bug. If you have a good case, you will win real money for the class and you will get paid. Right. And by requiring you to actually pay the class members before you get paid, you now lose the incentive to bring a bad case. And there are certainly good cases to bring. There are certainly times when corporations engage in wrongdoing.
Sure. Yes.
The Google case did settle for $62 million. We just don't, and we're not complaining that it settled for $62 million, but we're complaining that the money's not going to the class members.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So are there any interesting other cases you have going on now that we should be aware of?
We do some First Amendment stuff. Governor Newsom signed a law banning political parody if it uses AI. And we sued on behalf of somebody who created satirical videos, and we got that enjoined, and California has appealed. So we'll be defending free speech in that case. We have a case in Chicago and in D.C. over anti-American protesters who block highways and create gigantic traffic jams, and use the class action system the way it's supposed to be used on behalf of people who have claimed too small to bring their own lawsuit. And we say, you're liable to these thousands of people you trapped in your cars.
Yeah, right.
And some of these illegal demonstrations or actions, I guess, because they tying yourself to handcuffing yourself with other people and lying on a highway isn't quite a demonstration. You're not demonstrating against people traveling. You're just trying to disrupt the economy. But go ahead.
So, Ted, what the name of the group again is the Hamilton Lincoln Law? What? Say it again. The
Hamilton Lincoln Law Institute, HLLI.org.
So, are you a public interest group?
Yes, we're a public interest law firm.
Okay.
We're a 501c3, and we rely on the generosity of our donors.
So if somebody had a situation where they were harmed by a product and there was some kind of liability case and they didn't get, the trial lawyers walked away with all the money, how do they get made whole? Is there any way they can retrieve the money that they're owed?
Not if the case is already settled. They need to come to us when they get the notification of the settlement. We can't make them whole, but what we can do is we can try to block an abusive settlement. Though if there's real money at stake, they should opt out and hire an attorney to sue.
Well, the other thing is that, judges are lawyers, so don't they protect the lawyers?
I think there's a problem where, there are two problems. One is judges are used to an adversary process. And in the class action system, when it comes to settlements, we suddenly ask them to have an investigative role, and they're not really equipped for that. So they're used to a plaintiff and a defendant arguing against each other, and then suddenly the plaintiff and the defendant show up and we say, we have a settlement. And if the judge doesn't know to look out
for the things that the parties are hiding to screw over the people who aren't in court, the millions of people who are actually affected by the class action. They can make a mistake and approve a bad settlement.
Amazing. Well, thank you for doing what you're doing. I've been wanting to get you on the show for a long time to explain what is going on with the scam of these ambulance chasing trial lawyers. So it is the Hamilton Lincoln Law Institute. Can people contact you if they have, ideas of where they've been ripped off?
If you get a class action settlement notice that looks unfair, get a hold of us at HLLI.org. And there are many more cases out there than the 5 attorneys we have on staff can take on. But, we do the best we can with the resources we have.
You do a great job of it. Thank you so much, for coming on the show. Folks, this is the More Money Show. We will be right back. And I will be taking your calls when we get back. The 2 questions of the day are, number 1, I'm saying we should get young males in the workforce because if they're working, they're not going to be shooting people and causing mayhem and joining gangs. I want your reaction to that. And the second is, I think that Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve was way too negative about the economy. I'm feeling good about things. How are you feeling about things? 1-800-848-9222 is the More Money hotline, and we'll be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I always get a chuckle out of that. Endorsement from President Trump, who, by the way, has been so good to me over the years. I have such admiration for him. Even, when sometimes I will criticize his policies, he'll get mad at me, but he'll always forgive me. And I think 80% of the things he's doing are wonderful for the country. And he's a great man. He's also a good man. When I was under attack, when I was working for him, he defended me to the hilt, and it really meant so much to my wife and I. And he could have easily most politicians would have thrown me under the bus, and I wouldn't have even had a problem with that. I never wanted to, interfere with what he was doing, but he always stood by me. I have some skeletons in my closet. I am not holier than thou by any means. Anyway, great man. And I just get a thrill every time I hear that little clip from Donald Trump. Okay. We're going to get to your calls in just a minute. But I want to bring up one other subject because it's very timely. It just happened, yesterday. The U.S. Golden Visa. And, you probably heard about this, where they're calling it the Trump Gold Card. And, it's, you pay, I want to make sure I have the whole story here. You pay $1 million and you get a visa to come here. And then you have to start a business or create jobs. And I'm all for it. Yes, absolutely. Let's get the best and brightest. We can take the huddled masses too, but if somebody's going to pay $1 million, I mean, we put out 500,000 of these visas. Think about, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars we can use to reduce our deficit. We can get smart people that are going to create jobs. I love it. Let's do the gold visas. I like the Trump gold visas. How do you guys feel about it? I think it's a win-win for everybody. We get, people are successful. We get people who are smart. We get money into our treasury. We get more jobs for the country. It just makes a lot of sense to me. Why haven't we been doing this before? And we can have visas for family members and for other kind of occupations and, for people who are, let's say refugees and have a legitimate fear of, persecution in their home country, but we can also take the smart people. Why not? Why not do it? I liken this to let's say an NFL football team. Let's say the woeful, New York Jets. Let's say they could get every first round draft pick every year. Gee, how long do you think it would be to take them to be the number one, the Super Bowl champion every year? So we can be like that. We can be the country that gets the number one draft picks every year. And we take the very, very smartest, most successful people. And by the way, they'll be much more successful in the United States than anywhere else because we are a beacon of freedom and free enterprise. So I like that idea a lot. So we have one open line. We have a number of people waiting to be heard, and we will get to hopefully all of you. We have 1 or 2 open lines, and I want to hear from you. By the way, all the people who've called in, I'm just looking at the list. Steve and Dave and Teddy and Bob and Gene. They're all men. Come on, ladies. Why aren't you calling in? I want to hear from you. Okay, let's start first on the list. Steve in New Jersey. What do you got for us, sir?
Hey, Steve. Been with you from day one. Steve, I'll address your Fed issue. I agree with you. For too long, all right, the powers that be here looking to the Fed as the economic guru of the U.S. economy. That's got to stop. And I go back to what your mentor, Steve Forbes, says. We've got to get the Fed back to where they belong. Ensure a stable money supply. That's it. And that's where Trump and future appointments has a role. That's it. Case closed. But Steve, I have to partially disagree with you, or at least take umbrage with you. Our people, I'm talking about common sense conservatives, have been sort of guilty of pushing this notion that the Fed runs the economy. Go back 25 years, Steve, all right? We were applauding keeping the interest rates low because people could afford houses and cars and buy other things. And what did it do? People accumulated debt they couldn't pay. Not to mention the bad paper that wound up down on Wall Street, those subprime loans, all right? And what happened then? Then we needed government bailouts. And I heard people on your team say, prime the Fed pump and spend more money. I agree with you. What are the solutions? I always come with solutions, Steve. You're right. We got to cut spending. President Trump has using Doge with this budget coming up. Let's get some spending cuts.
Okay, Steve, you got an A in economics today. I love it. Very good call. I love it because you agree with me. So you must be smart, right? Okay, let's see who do we have next. I think we have Gene in Brooklyn.
Yes, Steve Moore. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for calling, Gene.
You come up with a lot of good ideas, but the only problem I have with you, the one with the kids working at an early age.
Yes.
You're not giving a solution. You're not giving a solution how it should be done. I know how it should be done the way we did it when we were kids. The way the colleges go to high schools with the forums. People in business or people big business to go to high school and get these kids out working.
Yes. Look, I'm not saying, Gene, that we should pull people out of school. Obviously, we want kids in high school.
I'm not saying pull them out, but that's where you recruit them.
Exactly. And also, why can't a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old be in school, but also working 20 hours a week, doing...
It's an internship. It's an internship.
Yes, or an internship or any job is better than sitting around smoking pot.
Why can't you install this with someone to do it?
All right, we're going to do this, Gene, because it makes so much sense. I appreciate the call. Again, I love your call because you agree with me. But look, these girls and men, but mostly men, because men get into trouble. They're the ones who cause a lot of the violence if they don't have anything to do. And what they're doing, they're smoking pot. They're going to, they're drinking. And then they're on the internet, and they're not, and by the way, a lot of kids, even my own kids have been guilty of this. And so if I made one mistake in the kids, and I'm so proud of my sons, but I wish I had them out there working earlier. I don't want to work. I hate work. Well, they put so much resistance to it. But I think the kids that are working, just look, if you start working younger in your life, you're going to be successful. It's just that the evidence is crystal clear on that. Okay. Let's see who else we've got here. We have Teddy from the Yonkers.
Yes, sir, Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, I take issue with a number of things that you profess.
All right.
Let me just make my points, please, before you
Teddy, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, so go.
Okay, fine. Okay, the Federal Reserve, when it was implemented back, I think, in the 30s or 1913. I'm not sure of the exact time.
It was 1913. It was about that.
That's when the income tax came into effect.
Yes, that's right.
It has separate. It's supposed to be independent from the government, and yet Trump is the only president who interferes drastically, and you don't say a word about that.
Okay. So Teddy, hold on, time out, because I'll let you finish your thought, but let me address that, because I think you're making a very fair point. I do think Trump has kind of intervened here, and I do want an independent Fed, Teddy. You're exactly right. It should be independent of politics, but I believe that Jerome Powell has been incompetent, and I believe he needs to be accountable to someone. So, Teddy, I'm going to throw this right back in your face, if I may, because I appreciate your call. The question I have for you is, who should the Fed be accountable to?
Well, that's the whole idea of appointing people that have been researched and based on their background and their history and their academic back support, and that's what it should be.
So do you think they should have life? Well, okay. I mean, look, you can tell I'm torn about this because I agree with you. Independence is important, but competence is too. So I don't know what we do about that because we've had a Fed that I believe is costing us jobs. It's not, it has been, restraining economic growth, in my opinion, with its policies, and that hurts real people, Teddy.
But Steve, the economy is improving. Powell is happy with the economy, and you're even happy with the economy. Look at the stock market.
You're right.
Stock market, Steve.
All right. Well, you know what, Teddy?
Before you cut me off, you look exactly like the late great, brilliant Mark Shields, who was a centrist Democrat. And
I love Mark Shields, by the way.
He has completely different viewpoints from you.
Oh, you know what?
Many things.
Okay, so Teddy, I'm gonna cut you off there and say thank you for your call. By the way, Mark Shields was a good friend of mine. He and I didn't agree a lot on politics. I mean, we agreed on some things, but you know, it was a different age where you could disagree and not be screaming at each other and yelling at each other. You could go out, have a drink, and talk about stuff. Mark Shields was one of my heroes. I loved the guy. And by the way, he also was kind of a partner of the great, great, great Bob Novak. For those of you who are, over the age of 50, you probably remember the great Bob Novak. That was when reporters were real reporters. They went out and got a story. They weren't on TV blathering about things. They were actually getting stories. And that's a bygone era in journalism. Okay. Do we have time to slip one more in before we take a break, Mr. Producer? Okay, we're going to take one more quick one. Let's go with Bob in Brooklyn. Bob, we've got about a minute and a half.
All right, I won't take much of your time, Steve. I'm the first-time caller.
Thank you for calling.
And my solution for the youth is a mandatory draft. That's the only way to get the kids. That's the only way to get to, the only way to get them to learn patriotism, get them to work ethics. And I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I'm speaking because I boosted my own draft.
So, Bob, first of all, thank you for your great service to our country. I am saluting you. Thank you. And thank you for calling. I agree with you that it would be I think military training and learning to love our country and serve our country is a great, great calling. I am not in favor of a draft. I'm opposed to it. But I also agree that, you know, people who come out of the military do very well in their lives. It straightens out kids that had problems. So you show me somebody who served in our military, and I'm looking at somebody who is an outstanding citizen and a real contributor to our society. So it's a great point. Folks, we'll take a quick break. We've got some time for a few more callers when we get back. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend in the middle of September, although we're headed towards the end of September. I think we're near let me see, what is the date today? The 20th. So tomorrow, I guess, is the last official day of summer. I hate the summer to end, but I love the fall as well. So get out and have a great, great time on this beautiful Saturday afternoon in most parts of the East Coast. I know a lot of our callers and listeners are in New Jersey, and I was mentioning this earlier on the show that there is a big problem in New Jersey. Look, and I don't endorse candidates for office. I am a Republican. I don't always vote for Republicans, but I am a Republican. I love Trump, but I am disturbed by what's going on in New Jersey. And I know so many of the listeners are in the great state of New Jersey, because they're lying about the Republican candidate for governor. I'm not going to mention his name. I'm just going to say, you cannot trust these political ads. The Democrats are saying that the Republican candidate is going to raise taxes. Huh? Wait a minute. The Democrats have run that state for 50 frickin' years. And they're saying the Republicans are going to be raising the taxes. Now, as I said earlier, I want to repeat this. New Jersey has one of the highest personal income tax rates in the country. I think you're only behind New York and California. New Jersey has the highest business tax on businesses, on the corporations. It also has, I'm just looking at these numbers, it also has the highest effective property tax. New Jersey is a tax hell. I don't know how you guys stay there with these high taxes. Way, way, way higher. You're paying twice as much in taxes as people do in red states like Texas or Tennessee or New Jersey. Now, the gubernatorial candidate, who's the Republican, said, why don't we have a tax system more like Tennessee and spend less money? And now he's being attacked for raising taxes. He's saying, let's get rid of the income tax potentially. I love that idea. I really love that idea. I think New Jersey would be a rocket ship if it had no income tax. Imagine that. Imagine how many businesses would move into New Jersey, how many jobs you'd have. So I wanted to call your attention to that because the ad is running and it is an absolute lie by the Democratic. I think it's run by the Democratic National Committee. The other thing I wanted to mention to you before I get to your calls, and I know we have a number of people on, and I'll get to you in a minute, folks, is California. I know we have some stations in California. We have some callers in from California. California is now moving. They are finally admitting that their green policies are causing complete turmoil. I mentioned earlier that they pay $5 a gallon for gas in California, and it's in Georgia, it's like $2.70 a gallon. So you're paying like a $2 a gallon tax in California just to live there because of all the crazy regulations that they have there. Now they're starting to see that they're running out of energy. And by the way, California is very energy rich state. They have a lot of oil and gas in California. They just won't go after it. It'd be like Alaska running out of ice. And so their prices are high. And now even Gavin Newsom is saying, well, we don't have the refineries. They're running out of electricity. Their electric costs are surging. The green energy movement is a flop. And it causes people to pay much, much higher rates for their electricity and gas, and it causes shortages and blackouts and brownouts. So even California, the most liberal state in the country, is admitting that the green energy climate change agenda was a complete flop. And I hope other states like New York and Connecticut and New Jersey move away from it. Trump on the federal level is promoting all energy. Oil, gas, coal, nuclear, and that's one of the reasons we're seeing a big decline in the price of gasoline at the pump in most states in the country, which is good news for motorists. All right. Let's see who we have here. Well, let's start with our friend. We have somebody calling in from Florida, Eduardo. Eduardo, what do you got for us?
Yeah, Stephen, this is one of my favorite topics is trade schools. And coming out of high school, 2 years at least of trade school or community college before you go to the 4-year. You have to have, a young person has to have a savings or checking account.
Yeah.
Do not depend on Uncle Sam to bail you out in the future.
Yes.
You got to have a savings account. You're going to have a 401k.
Yes.
You are going to be independent. You might even move to a state like Florida, like I am. We're about to have meetings
no, so Eduardo, hold on,
getting
Eduardo.
rid of property taxes.
Okay. So hold on. What do you do?
Oh, me? I'm retired. I mean, my house is paid off. The only thing I'm paying is utilities.
What did you do before you retired, Eduardo?
I was working for Blue Cross for 22 years.
Okay, got it. So, and you're saying if we had trade schools where people actually learn real skills, why can't high schools be doing that?
Right. They should. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, teach people to do something. These, and by the way, Florida is doing it right. You have no income tax right there. No income tax.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, so you're saving a lot of money on taxes living in Florida. It is a great place. I think you have one of the best governors, by the way, in the country.
Yeah. And they're having meetings on Monday about getting rid of property taxes. So
amazing.
That might happen in the future.
What a state. So Eduardo, thank you for calling in. A great point.
Thank you very much.
Look, folks,
Steve.
why can we not have trade schools? Why can't high schools say they're teaching social studies? What the hell is social studies? Why not teach people how to do things and be productive? Great call, Eduardo. Let's see who else we have here. Do we have Linda from Long Island?
Hi,
are you there,
Steve.
Linda? Hi, Linda.
I tried to get you last week. I couldn't get in. You were so busy.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you keep trying. I'm glad you're persistent.
I did. The main reason I called is because I want to tell you how much I respect you, and other people do. You were the only one who told the truth. We kept hearing that story about, we have to keep raising the interest rates. That's the only way. And last time they did that, that's when everything went down to garbage. Yeah. You remember that, right? They kept lowering the interest rates, and everything was nothing. And that's when we were in real trouble. And now they did it one quarter. That's enough. This is enough. You were talking about today. I was so surprised this morning, this afternoon. I was really impressed. I said, you have.
So Linda, let me ask you a question, Linda, before I let you go, because I've got a couple other people waiting, and we're good. So, you live in New York. Do you vote?
Do I vote?
Do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. So I am very, very concerned about Mamdani. I think if the city of New York goes socialist, I think it's the end of the Empire City. I think it's going to destroy New York City. And I think you're going to see Wall Street leave. So what is going on here? Why are so many New Yorkers suckered into this line that we could just tax all the rich people and they're going to leave? They're going to leave.
But but I don't even know if it's really true. They keep saying they're coming out with polls, this poll and that poll, and they haven't asked me. Where are these polls and where are these people coming from? People who live in New York, or are they all just illegals or something? I mean,
well, I think it's young people.
Liberals?
Yeah, Linda, thanks for calling. I think what's going on here is young people are suckered into this idea that socialism, I'm so concerned about this. The polls show the young people are much more into socialism, and they're also much more into political violence. There is a poll out showing that the more liberal you are, the more in favor you are of using violence to shut down your enemies. I mean, my God, whatever happened to give peace a chance? And the idea of, Martin Luther King and Gandhi of non-violent protests. Now they believe in violence. That makes me very nervous, folks. Okay. Who else do we got? Do we have time for one or two more callers, Mr. Producer?
Yes.
Who's next?
David from Staten Island.
Let's take David from Staten Island.
I have one statement to make. First is that you are really a blessing. The idea of the farm children being taught proper etiquette and so on, and then coming to cities where they go to school, they only have a mindset of the farm is still with them to learn. Yes. I'd like to add something else. You brought up the subject of trade schools. I went to McKee High School. As a 5-year-old, I was hit by a car in front of the school, and a lot of punishment throughout my life. Then when I went to McKee High School as a student, they gave us an IQ test, and they also taught me how to use a drawing board. I showed it to the class, and I was sabotaged by the class on my projects, pushing the fights that I was robbed. I had to switch schools, even though Curtis didn't have what I wanted, they still stayed in school. Over the years, I found out that I've been restricted since birth. I am 81 this September 29th.
81. Well, you know what? I'm so pleased that you're a loyal listener to the More Money Show. I appreciate your kind words, sir. Thanks for calling. So, folks, one of the things that's contributing to the fact that so few young males are working is the minimum wage. And I don't oppose a reasonable minimum wage, but I've always believed that we should have what I would call a teen or a starter minimum wage for people just entering the workforce. If you're like me, and I know we have a lot of young people, but we have a lot of, seniors listening to the show as well. If you're in your 60s or 70s, you probably remember your first job. I do. I worked in a factory. I was picking, packing orders. It was hard, tough work. I learned a lot from that first job. I learned a lot about just basic job skills and being productive on the job and being kind to your boss and how you can get ahead. So those first jobs are so critical, and we've cut them off because so many states have minimum wages that are so high that it doesn't make sense to hire a teenager at 12 or 13 or 14 or $15 an hour because they can't produce enough to make money on that. So why not have a teenage minimum wage of maybe $6 an hour? And by the way, the average person who gets the minimum wage only gets that wage for about 6 months. And then one of two things happen. Either they get fired because they can't do the job, or they get a pay raise. And so you cannot climb the economic ladder if you can't go on the first rung of the economic ladder. You see what I'm saying? We're cutting off the lowest rungs of the economic ladder, which is hurting the very, lower income people that the left says it will help. And so what we're finding, I'm going to give you some of these numbers because they're pretty amazing. If you look at the states with the highest minimum wages, those tend to be the states with really high unemployment rates for teenagers. And that includes, let's see here. I want to make sure I don't misquote this. Yeah, the states like, Washington, D.C., California. California has a $15 to $20 an hour minimum wage. That's crazy. What kind of a 17-year-old is worth $20 an hour? They just aren't. So let's have a teen minimum wage as a way to get people back into the workforce, or at least starting in the workforce, and learn basic job skills. Another point, some of you may have heard me talk about this, but I'm going to say it again. One of my favorite schools is called the College of the Ozarks. And College of the Ozarks has no tuition. There's no tuition to go to College of the Ozarks. It's a great school. I've given lectures there. They're great kids. And now you're saying, how can a college not have tuition? Because every kid on campus works for 20 hours a week. In other words, they're working for their education. Gee, what a concept to put a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old to work. And those were some of the brightest kids, hardest working kids I've met. And they appreciate their education because they have to work for it. What's the old saying? Anything easily attained is lowly regarded. If you have to actually work for it, you're going to make sure you're getting the education that you need. So there's an idea. Instead of having college loans, why don't we have kids in college at Harvard or Yale or Princeton or Northwestern or Duke work 20 hours a week and use that money to pay for the cost of the college, rather than having it put on the back of the taxpayers? I think everybody would be better off if we had that kind of system. I also believe that we have to start taxing these enormous endowments that these universities have. I count $1 trillion of college endowments. It is not being used to reduce tuitions. In fact, tuitions go up. The more the endowments go up, the more the tuitions go up. So if the colleges are not using that money, which was put into these endowments tax-free, if they're not using it to lower the tuitions for the kids, we should tax that money. And we should I believe we could lower our budget deficit and debt by $150 billion if we taxed these college endowments, which, by the way, are not doing a very good job teaching our kids, given what's happening on college campuses these days. So it would be, I think, something that could lower our deficit, improve the performance of the schools, and improve the performance of the kids. So why not do that? And Trump is right about the visas. We should let in people who are smart. They should pay for it. And it's a good way to reduce our deficit. I mean, Trump's full of great ideas. I'm bullish on America, folks. I hope you are. I hope you're having a great weekend. We'll be back. Same bat time, same bat channel on the More Money Show. Have a great weekend and keep the faith.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Buying a car in Carvana was so easy. I was able to finance it through them.
Whoa, wait, you mean finance?
Yeah, finance. Got pre-qualified for a Carvana auto loan, entered my terms, and shot from thousands of great car options all within my budget.
That's cool, but financing through Carvana was so easy.
Financed. Done. And I get to pick up my car from their Carvana vending machine tomorrow.
Financed.
Right, that's what I said.
You can spend time trying to pronounce financing, or you can actually finance and buy your car today on
Carvana.
Financing subject to credit approval. Additional terms and conditions may apply.